Today we will be learning about cloud security. Cloud security ultimately comes down to building and maintaining trust across three parties: cloud providers, the networks that carry your data, and us, the cloud consumers. We will keep returning to three core goals known as the CIA triad. C stands for confidentiality, which means keeping data secret, integrity, which means keeping it correct, and availability, which means keeping it reliably accessible. Cybersecurity is the practice that ties these goals together by preventing, detecting, and responding to misuse across cloud systems and services. Before we jump into tools, we need a shared vocabulary and mental map of how attacks actually unfold. That way, when we later discuss controls, we can see how each one encounters a specific risk. What is information security? Information security is an umbrella that protects data, systems, and networks from both mistakes and malice. It sits at the intersection of technology, policy, and human behavior. You can't configure away a problem if people keep reusing passwords or bypassing processes. Likewise, perfect training won't help if software is unpatched. Our target state is simple to state but hard to achieve. Information must be safe from prying eyes, remain accurate through its life cycle, and be available when needed. Cloud computing raises the stakes because the resources are shared, exposed through API, and accessed from anywhere, which increases the number of ways things can go wrong. Clarity about who is responsible for which controls turns this complexity into something we can manage. Confidentiality. Here, confidentiality means that only authorized people and systems can see the data, whether it is resting in storage or moving across networks. In practice, we rely on encryption to render intercepted data useless, and we pair that with strong identity and access management so that even insiders only see what they truly need. Consider a hospital transferring patient records to a research database. Confidentiality is satisfied only if the data can't be read along the way, and access inside the cloud is limited to permitted researchers. Weak passwords, shared accounts, or overly broad permissions often break confidentiality more than exotic hacks do, which is why basics like multi factor authentication and least privilege matter. When we treat confidentiality as a design constraint rather than an afterthought, systems are naturally harder to exploit. Integrity. Integrity assures that the data has not been altered behind our backs and that computations haven't been silently corrupted. We verify integrity with hashes, checksums, and digital signatures. And we design data flows so that storage, processing, and retrieval do not unintentionally change content. If you upload a file to the cloud and later download it for analysis, integrity means it is bit for bit the same unless an authorized process has changed and recorded that change. This guarantee underpins trust in dashboards, reports, and machine learning models that depend on cloud data being consistent over time. Without integrity, insights can become guesses and debugging becomes guesswork because you can't trust the inputs. Availability. Availability is a promise that systems and data will be ready when legitimate users need them. Despite failures or attacks, we pursue availability through redundancy, which means no single point of failure, backups, which is recoverability, and elasticity, the ability to scale up and down under load. While recognizing that it is a shared responsibility among provider, carrier, and consumer. A research team relying on a patient database at 2 a.m. needs the network to carry traffic, the provider's platform to operate, and the application owner to have configured auto scaling and alerts. Designing for graceful degradation, partial service instead of a total outage can keep essential functions running during incidents. Ultimately, availability is a business promise enforced by technical architecture and operational discipline. Authenticity and non repudiation. Authenticity gives us confidence that messages, files, and actions come from who they claim to come from. while non repudiation makes it difficult for the sender to later deny involvement. We achieve these properties with strong authentication, digital signatures, and comprehensive audit logs that record who did what and when. For example, a digitally signed approval in a workflow is both verifiable and traceable, which supports compliance requirements and dispute resolution. These features are not just legal necessities, they prevent attackers from forging instructions or silently altering records. In cloud environments, with many automated services, authenticity prevents machine to machine impersonation as effectively as it deters human fraud. Security controls, mechanisms, and policies. A helpful way to organize your thinking is controls are the objectives, mechanisms are the tools, and policy are the rules. A control might say limit access to sensitive data. The mechanism could be role based access control plus encryption. And the policy specifies who is eligible for which roles and how requests are reviewed. Policies create consistency, mechanisms enforce these rules reliably, and controls ensure the system actually mitigates the risk we care about. When incidents happen, we trace failures back to one of these layers the wrong rule or the right tool used incorrectly or the absence of an objective. Maturing security means tightening all three layers together, not just buying another product. What is risk? Risk is the combination of the likelihood that something bad will happen and the impact if it does. And it encompasses both intentional attacks and unintentional errors. In cloud settings, misconfiguration can quietly create enormous risk, like storage bucket made public by accident without an attacker's involvement. Conversely, a high-profile threat may pose little risk if compensating control make exploitation unlikely or low impact. Understanding risk helps us prioritize limited time and budget. Fix high impact, high likelihood issues first, then reduce the rest to acceptable levels. Good security is therefore risk management in action, not a quest for zero risk. Vulnerabilities and exploit. A vulnerability is a weakness, unpatched software, a default password, a confusing process that creates an opening. An exploit is when someone actually uses that opening to break in, break out, or break things. Vulnerabilities exist in code, configurations, and people, so reducing risk means patching, hardening, and training in parallel. Attackers chain small weaknesses into big compromises, so fixing little issues deprives them of the links that they rely on. Zero day breaches. A zero day is a flaw defenders don't know about or haven't fixed yet, giving attackers a head start until the patches exist and are deployed. A security breach is any event where someone gains access they shouldn't have, and a data breach is when confidential information is stolen in the process. A data leak can occur without an attacker, say attaching the wrong file to an email or misshare a link. Logging, anomaly detection, and least privilege access help spot and contain these events quickly, turning major crashes into minor incidents. Speed matters. The sooner we detect and respond, the less harm is done. Threats, attacks, and attackers. A threat is a possibility, an attack is that possibility becoming real. And attackers bring different motives, patience levels, and skill sets. Cybercriminals chase profit, malicious insiders abuse trusted access, activities pursue social or political goals, and state sponsored groups play the long game against high value targets. Once they cross a boundary, they become intruders who may move literally and escalate privileges. Understanding who might target you and why helps you choose the right preventive and detective control. Attack vector and surfaces. An attack vector is the path into your system. An email attachment, exposed API, a weak login page, while your attack surface is the total collection of these paths. We reduce the surface area by closing unused ports, removing obsolete accounts, minimizing publicly exposed features, and enforcing strong defaults. Human behavior expands or shrinks the surface as well. Password reuse or sharing credentials open doors without changing a single line of code. Periodic surface reviews help teams see what is truly exposed today, not just what diagrams say. Shrinking exposure is often the quickest, cheapest risk reduction that you can make. And in the next class, we'll be going over what are threat agents and talking more about the attackers and what kind of malwares that we can see and what kind of attacks that we have in cloud. That is all for today's class. I'll see you again on Wednesday.